D.C. voters face a new political era without Eleanor Holmes Norton after her 18 terms in Congress. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Washington app. For the first time in a generation, Washingtonians woke up to a general election lineup that doesn't include Eleanor Holmes Norton, who served 18 terms as the District of Columbia's non-voting representative in Congress, chose not to run for re-election after mounting concerns that, at 89 years old, she was no longer capable of forcefully combating a Republican-led Congress and presidential administration constantly overriding the heavily Democratic city's leadership. Voters choose their local leaders, but Congress has final say on the laws the city passes and its budget. Councilmember Robert White Jr. won the Democratic primary to replace Norton and is expected to win the general election in November. He will face Republican Denise Rosado, an immigration attorney who ran unopposed. A D.C. native and lifelong resident, White is a lawyer and worked as Norton's legislative counsel for 5 years, as well as serving at the Attorney General's office for the District of Columbia before winning the special election in 2016 for an at-large seat on the D.C. Council. D.C. Council member Robert White Jr., accompanied by his wife, waves to supporters after casting his vote during the D.C. primary election. AP photo/Jose Luis Magana. D.C. Council member Robert White Jr., accompanied by his wife, waves to supporters after casting his vote during the D.C. primary election. AP photo/Jose Luis Magana. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook, copy link, copied print, email X, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Flipboard, Pinterest, Reddit. Read more. Our turn will never come unless we demand it. Eleanor Holmes Norton understood that. The generations before us understood that. And before this night is over, I hope every Washingtonian understands it, too. We will not yield, White told a cheering crowd of supporters after polls closed Tuesday. A new era for D.C. politics. The D.C. delegate position is a non-voting one, but it grants the nearly 700,000 people of the district, who have no other representation in Congress, the voice through speechmaking on the House floor and bill introduction. In Congress, Norton championed education, including securing a grant program that provided up to $10,000 annually to D.C. high school graduates to assist with out-of-state tuition. She also pushed for federal legislation that helped save the city from financial ruin. Eleanor Holmes Norton, DDC, speaks during a hearing of the Aviation Subcommittee of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Capitol Hill, Dec. 16, 2025, in Washington. AP photo/Mark Skiefelbin, file Eleanor Holmes Norton, DDC, speaks during a hearing of the Aviation Subcommittee of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Capitol Hill, Dec. 16, 2025, in Washington. AP photo/Mark Skiefelbin, file at AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook, copy link, copied print, email X, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Flipboard, Pinterest, Reddit. Read more. Calls for her to step aside grew in the aftermath of a surge of federal law enforcement officers and National Guard troops into the city last year by President Donald Trump. Critics, including her former chief of staff, argued that she was diminished and no longer capable of providing the energy and presence the moment called for against Trump. Read more. The pressure on Norton to drop out came as questions of generational change gripped the Democratic Party after President Joe Biden, also in his 80s, tried to run for re-election despite concerns about his age. He eventually dropped out and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor, but she lost to Trump, sparking ongoing recriminations. Before running for office, Norton was a fixture of the civil rights movement. In 1963, she split her time between Yale Law School and Mississippi, where she volunteered for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. One day during the Freedom Summer, civil rights activist Medgar Evers picked her up at the Jackson airport. He was assassinated that night. Norton also helped organize and attended the 1963 March on Washington. Norton went on to become the first woman to lead the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which helps enforce anti-discrimination laws in the workplace. Eleanor Holmes Norton, DDC, listens to speakers during a House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee hearing at the Capitol in Washington, Dec. 12, 2023. AP photo/Amanda Andrade Rhodes. File Del. Eleanor Holmes Norton, DDC, listens to speakers during a House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee hearing at the Capitol in Washington, Dec. 12, 2023. AP photo/Amanda Andrade Rhodes. File. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook. Copy link. Copied print. Email X, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Flipboard, Pinterest, Reddit. Read more. Political historian Matt Dallek said her credentials bring a certain gravitas and moral standing that I think a lot of residents in the district could respond to and did respond to. It resonated with them. That kind of generational moral clarity and moral gravitas that she and others brought to the political arena is being lost. That's not to say that others can't pick up that mantle, he said, but White will have different concerns and experiences in a city changing demographically. Different challenges and priorities for a changing city. White would become only the third Washington delegate to Congress since 1971, when Walter Fauntroy Jr. was elected as the non-voting delegate. The position was created in 1970 under the District of Columbia Delegate Act. George Derek Musgrove, Associate Professor of History at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, said no candidates seeking the office have the national stature of their predecessors, which is, for me, one of the biggest changes in the city. Both Fauntroy and Norton, Musgrove said, leveraged their national political contacts to do the work of the delegate. White made D.C. statehood and pushing back on federal interference in local affairs priorities in the campaign. He will need to build relationships quickly, said Amanda Huron, a professor